The world didn't begin with silence, and it certainly didn't begin with simplicity. Long before the ink of recorded history had dried on clay tablets or stone stelae, humanity had already begun shaping the world brick by brick, law by law, and myth by myth. But the sands of time do not sing their secrets freely. They must be coaxed into memory, brushed gently from beneath the ruins of empires, the bones of forgotten monarchs, and the fading whispers of languages no longer spoken. This is not a story of dates and dusty names. This is the story of how human beings, just like us, with hunger and hope and hurt and imagination, built the world from nothing. Civilizations that rose from the mud of riverbanks, that erected temples meant to outlast death, that stared into the stars and dared to write meaning into the void. Tonight, in the quiet darkness where sleep is hard to find, we are not going to travel forward. We are going back, far, far back, to the threshold of civilization itself. Back to a time when writing had just begun, when cities first lit their lamps, and when gods still walked among men not because they were real, but because people needed them to be. Let us begin where time itself begins for many historians. In the valleys where rivers meet dust, and empires meet eternity. In the lands between the Tigris and Euphrates, where the soil cracks under the weight of ancient sun, the first cities of humanity stirred. They did not begin with the sound of trumpets or the march of armies. They began with irrigation canals, with mud brick walls, with shared granaries and silent gods. Mesopotamia, they called it, the land between rivers. But to the people who lived there, it was simply the world. The Sumerians, the earliest known builders of this world, are not names we learn in childhood. Their kings are not household words. Their gods are not worshipped. And yet they invented something without which no story could be told: writing. Cuneiform, the pressed wedge marks of a reed stylus into soft clay, dried in the sun, carrying taxes, prayers, contracts, and dreams. Imagine the moment. A scribe kneels beside a priest, transcribing an offering. His hands are rough, the tablet heavy, but the symbols he carves will outlive him by 5,000 years. He does not know that you are hearing his echo now, but you are. And that's the miracle of civilization. Uruk was a city that was not just relit, was eternal. With high walls and ziggurats that touched the clouds, it stood as a testament to what organized people could do together. Gilgamesh, whether he was myth or memory, was its king. And his story, the Epic of Gilgamesh's, the first great human tale. A story of friendship, grief, death, and the longing for immortality. Sound familiar? That's because it is. Even 5,000 years ago, humans feared the same things we do now: loss, time, the unknown. And they built their civilizations as armor against it. Across the riverbeds and dusty plains, the Akkadians rose, and with them came empire. Sargon, the great ruler of the four quarters of the world, marched his armies across Mesopotamia, uniting Sumerian city-states under a single rule for the first time. His conquests weren't just military, they were administrative. The first bureaucracy, the first imperial taxation, the first sense that a king could rule lands he never personally saw. But empires are fragile things, and in the churn of the centuries, one name would come to dominate, not by might, but by law: Hammurabi, king of Babylon. His code etched in stone didn't invent justice, but it gave it form. An eye for an eye, we remember. But there was more. Regulations on trade. Protections for the weak. A structured hierarchy of accountability. Civilization, you see, is not just bricks and banners. It is rules. It is agreements between strangers. As the Babylonian priests tracked the stars and calculated eclipses, as they mapped the sky and the gods alike, they laid foundations for both astronomy and religion. To look up at the heavens and believe they were filled with meaning, that is not just ancient, that is human. But while Mesopotamia was building its cities in the dust, elsewhere another river was stirring. One mightier, broader, more patient. The Nile, and on its banks rose pyramids, so enduring, they remain defiant against the bite of time even today. Ancient Egypt was not a shadow of Mesopotamia, it was its own miracle. Where the Tigris and Euphrates brought floods that destroyed, the Nile brought floods that fed. Its rhythm was the rhythm of life itself. And so Egypt built not in fear of the flood, but in reverence of it. Their gods were not tempestuous warriors, but reflections of the land. Osiris, the god who dies and is reborn, was the Nile itself, in the still heat of morning, when the dew still clung to the reeds and the tombs of kings lay silent beneath sand. And stars, laborers dragged stones across causeways with ropes and chants. It took tens of thousands of men, decades of effort, and an unyielding belief that death was not the end, but merely a passage. The pyramids were not built with slaves, not in the modern sense, but by seasonal laborers, by farmers during the flood months, by a population united not by chains, but by cosmology. Imagine the sound of it, the chisel on limestone, the creak of wood, the murmured prayers to Ra as the sun blazed overhead. The pharaoh, divine and distant, was not merely a man but a god in flesh. To disobey him was not treason, it was blasphemy. His tomb, then, had to match his soul, vast, complex, eternal, and in their tombs they stored not just treasure but memory scenes of daily life, of cattle and bread, of games and gardens, as if to say, "This too shall pass, but not me, not all of me." As centuries turned, dynasties rose and fell, the Sphinx watched in silence, and always civilization endured, but neither Mesopotamia nor Egypt existed in isolation. To the east, in the lands of the Indus River, a quieter miracle was unfolding. The cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, laid out in straight lines with sewage systems that would not be matched for millennia. No great temples, no monuments to kings, no known weapons of war, and yet ordered cleanliness, unity. A civilization so advanced, so mysterious, that we still cannot read their writing. And that's the haunting truth, isn't it? Not everything is remembered. Not every voice echoes. Tonight, as we sit here, together in the hush between the past and the present, you are hearing the breath of civilizations that no longer draw breath. You are walking streets that no longer exist. You are glimpsing lives that burned like fireflies in the dark breath. Brilliant, and gone, and yet not gone, because here you are, still listening, still wondering, still reaching back through time. For the first brick, the first word, the first law, the first name, this is only the beginning. Civilization is not born in a moment. It grows like a tree, branching, splitting, stretching out toward the unknown, even as its roots remain buried in the same deep soil of human longing. as we drift further into the quiet shadows of the past, where the light of modern memory can no longer reach, we begin to see that what we call ancient was, once, the very edge of possibility. We left off in the lands of the Indus where straight streets and careful planning told a tale of a people more interested in stability than glory, more invested in harmony than heroism. Their cities rose not from conquest, but coordination. No grand tombs for kings, no sculpted idols screaming of war, just symmetry. Clean water, commerce. It was as if the Indus Valley spoke in the language of balance. But silence is cruel. We do not know their names, we do not know their leaders, we do not even know the sound of their tongue. Their script remains undeciphered, their myths are ashes, and their gods, if they had them, do not whisper to us anymore. What remains is their design, their systems, the bones of their cities which lie flat and even, like the echo of a mind that sought order amidst chaos. It is almost unbearable to think that a people who thought so clearly left behind no voice for us to hear. What did they believe? What stories did they tell their children? How did they bury their dead? We see the bricks, but not the soul. Perhaps that is the nature of time, not to erase, but to reduce. A civilization can last 1,000 years and still be remembered only in broken pottery and outlines in the dust. And yet, while the Indus faded quietly, the world elsewhere was stirring with noise and ambition. Let us cross the mountains, over the passes into the high plateaus and yellow rivers of ancient China. Here, civilization blossomed not in a desert or among reeds, but in a land of duality, both bountiful and brutal. The Yellow River, or Huanghe, was a bringer of life and death. Its floods were as deadly as they were nourishing. It was no surprise, then, that the early Chinese saw Balancian and Yang as the foundation of reality itself. The earliest dynasty known from legend was the Xia. Whether it truly existed or not, we may never know. But the Shang dynasty, which followed, left evidence we can touch. Bronze vessels, oracle bones, tombs with chariots and sacrificed servants all speak of a society where ritual was law, and ancestors were always watching. Picture this: a royal priest, kneeling by firelight, presses a hot bronze rod against the underside of an ox bone. It cracks. He reads the lines like we read pages, asking questions of the spirit world. Will the harvest be strong? Will the enemy attack? Should the king wage war? This was governance, not from policy, but from prophecy. The Shang kings ruled, not just by sword, but by heaven's will. And when the Shang fell, the Zhou would later enshrine this concept into the cornerstone of Chinese political philosophy, the mandate of heaven. A divine right to rule, but one that could be revoked. If famine came, if floods drowned the fields, if people starved, it was not nature's wrath alone. It was heaven saying the king had failed. That simple idea that rulers serve only by merit and justice would echo through Chinese dynasties for over 2 millennia. Even rebellions claimed loyalty to it. The divine right was not absolute, it was conditional. And that changed everything. But what of the people who lived beneath the thrones? The villagers who planted millet, who fished the rivers, who whispered tales of dragons and ancestors. In the small homes with packed earth floors, families lit lamps of oil and burned incense, not to gods of conquest, but to family spirits. Ancestor worship was not religion in the way we understand it today. was a continuation of relationship. The dead were not gone, they were simply elsewhere, still watching, still guiding, still expecting offerings. Civilization here was not just bronze and bureaucracy, was memory. And memory, unlike stone, can move as we drift even farther west. Across deserts and along the crescent of the Mediterranean, we find a civilization less ancient perhaps, but no less mysterious. Crete, the cradle of the Minoans. An island civilization that flourished at a time when Egypt was already building pyramids, and Mesopotamian priests were already mapping the stars. The Minoans were different. Their art was fluid, alive. They painted dolphins and dancers, not war. Their palaces, Secili Gnosis, had no walls, no fortifications. Was it peace or na vit? We do not know, but their frescoes show vibrant color, celebration, ritual, sport. The bull-leaping ceremonies, the elegant dresses, the spirals and sea motifs, they speak of a people who saw beauty in movement and meaning in the natural world. Their writing, linear, remains unread. Like the Indus script, it is a locked door with no key. We see the shapes, the repetition, the apparent structure, but we do not know what they meant. It is perhaps the greatest frustration in archaeology, to have the words but not the voice, and yet we piece together what we can. The Minoans were traders, sailors, priests, engineers. They built plumbing systems before Rome was even a whisper. Their cities hummed with life until, one day, they didn't. Some say it was the volcano at Thera, modern-day Santorini, brought ruin. A blast so violent it darkened skies for months, sent tsunamis crashing into coasts, and perhaps even gave birth to the Atlantis legend. Others blame Mycenaean invasion. Whatever the truth, by 1100 BCE, the Minoan world was quiet, but the Mycenaeans, their mainland neighbors, carried the torch forward. They were harder, more militarized, obsessed with honor and death. Their citadels were crowned with lion gates. Their tombs held gold death masks and weapons of war. And from their myths of kings, of wars, of wrathful gods, we would eventually receive the works of Homer, the Iliad, the Odyssey. They were not history, but memory twisted into poetry. They were how civilization remembered itself when writing was lost. And yes, writing was lost. Around 1200 BCE, the Bronze Age collapse tore through the eastern Mediterranean like a scythe. Mycenae fell, Troy burned, the Hittites vanished. Even mighty Egypt trembled. Trade routes died. Cities emptied. Writing systems disappeared. It was as if the world had forgotten how to be civilized. The causes still debated: earthquakes, drought, invaders called the Sea Peoples, internal revolt, perhaps all of it, perhaps more. The truth may never be fully known, but the collapse was real, and it was total. For nearly 100 years, darkness reigned, but then slowly light returned. In Greece, letters returned this time, borrowed from Phoenicians. In the Levant, cities were reborn. In the ashes of collapse, new stories began. That is civilization's truest magic. It forgets, but it also remembers. It breaks, but it rebuilds. It dies, but it dreams again. Even as the names change and the scripts shift, the heartbeat continues. The same questions: who are we? Why are we here? How do we live together? Echo through time, and that is why we look back. not to glorify, not to mourn, but to understand, because their story is still our story, and it's only just begun. Time is not a straight road. It twists, it folds, it circles back upon itself. And as we journey through the fog of history, we begin to realize that the rise of civilization is not a ladder but a mosaic interlocking, overlapping each piece. Shaped by climate, geography, chance, and human will. The past is never lost. It only waits, buried beneath layers of silence, for someone to listen closely enough to hear it breathe. So far, we've heard the echoes of Mesopotamia's gods, felt the warm winds of the Nile brushing across temple stones, stood before the tombs of kings, wandered the gridded streets of the Indus, glimpsed the bully purrs of Crete, and watched civilization collapse into sudden darkness. But the world is wide, and while these centers of early power flickered or failed, other fires were lit quietly, steadily in places far from the usual story. Let us now travel west of the great rivers, and far from the bronze-clad warriors of the Mediterranean. Let us step into a land carved not by flooding rivers, but by sun-baked mountains and stony plains. This is the story of the ancient peoples of the Americas, whose civilizations arose independently, without ever hearing the names of Egypt or Babylon, without the wheel, without horses, and without metal tools as we know them, yet they too built cities, developed calendars, engineered canals, and stared into the heavens in search of divine meaning. In the humid lowlands of what is now southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras, a great civilization rose from the jungle like a dream, made real. The Maya, long before their stone cities peaked above the canopy, they had already mapped the stars and calculated the cycles of time with unnerving precision. Their calendar systems were layered, mathematical, cyclical. They did not count time as a line, but as a living, breathing spiral, each turn carrying echoes of the last. Imagine a scribe seated beneath a thatched roof, eyes fixed on the sky. Night after night, he records the path of Venus, the phases of the moon, the movement of shadows across stone markers. These were not idle curiosities. To the Maya, astronomy was survival. Crops depended on timing. Rituals depended on alignment. Lives were shaped by the silent choreography of celestial bodies. Their cities, Tikal-Copan, Palenque, not only centers of politics and trade, but of cosmic meaning. Pyramids were built not just tall, but aligned. Temples faced shadow patterns on equinoxes. The world was a clock, and the gods were its gears. But these gods were not kind in the way we might hope. They demanded sacrifice, often human, sometimes blood drawn by the ruler himself. Pain was not punishment, it was offering. To suffer was to feed the sky, to grease the hinges of the universe. This was not cruelty for cruelty's sake, it was reciprocity, a contract with the cosmos. You give to the gods, so that they give in return. Rain, fertility, peace. The rulers of the Maya were not merely kings, they were divine mediators. Their blood was a bridge. Their dreams shaped the fate of their people. And when they died, they did not fade into memory but transformed, immortalized in stone glyphs that wrap around monuments like vines. Their writing system, complex, beautiful, phonetic, and pictorial, allowed them to capture dynasties, wars, rituals, poetry. We can read many of these now. We know the names of kings and queens, their victories, their defeats. We know how they styled themselves. Divine Lord, he of the holy blood, skybound one. But we also know they fell, not in a blaze, not with a conqueror's sword, but slowly, unevenly, city by city, the classic Maya civilization collapsed. Theories abound: overpopulation, drought, warfare, environmental collapse. Perhaps all of these, perhaps more. The jungle crept in where once banners flew, temples cracked, markets fell silent, glyphs were carved no more. And yet, the Maya did not vanish. They simply changed. Descendants still live today, still speak Mayan languages, still honor pieces of the old world. Civilization, again, did not die. It transformed. As we shift our gaze farther south, high into the Andes, another civilization waits in the thin air above the clouds. The Inca, to understand. The Inca is to understand power without writing, roads without wheels, architecture without mortar. Theirs was an empire built on backbone, literally, a long stretch of mountains called the spine of South America, and administratively, with a level of control that would make Roman emperors take notice. From their capital at Cusco, the Inca ruled over an empire that stretched more than 2,500 miles north to south. But they left no books, no libraries, no codices. Instead, they used quipu, knotted cords of varying colors and positions that recorded information in a binary-like code. The exact language of the quipu remains elusive, but it was used for censuses, taxes, inventories, memory woven in fiber. The Inca built roads tens of thousands of miles, cutting through mountains, across valleys, linked by rope bridges that swayed above dizzying chasms. Runners carried messages from province to province in relay. An empire without writing, but not without communication. And then there was Machu Picchu, perched on a misty ridge, hidden until the modern era. A royal retreat, perhaps. A ceremonial site. Its exact purpose remains debated, but its beauty is undeniable. The stones fit so perfectly they seem grown from the earth itself. No mortar, just skill and will. Their society was rigid, hierarchical, yet highly organized, agricultural. Terraces clung to mountain slopes. Llamas carried burdens. Storehouses lined the highways. And everywhere, the idea of a Nirasaprasited governed relationships between communities, between people and the state, between the earth and the sky. And above all, the Sapa Inca emperor. He was the son of the sun, divine in nature, untouchable in status. When he died, he did not leave the palace. He continued to be worshipped, to own land, to receive offerings. New emperors had to build new palaces. The dead still ruled. Such was the strength of the Incas' hold until a small group of Spanish adventurers, with steel and horses and invisible diseases, brought their world crashing down. But let's not step into conquest yet. There are still more corners of ancient civilization to explore. Because even in Africa, beyond Egypt, beyond the sands and the Nile, cities rose and fell in silence. In the savannas and forests, great centers of power formed that were once dismissed or forgotten. Nubia, south of Egypt, was not merely a shadow. It had its own language, its own gods, its own pharaohs. At times, it conquered Egypt itself. Kingdom of Kush, based at Napata and later Meru, built pyramids, not imitations, but their own style, their own purpose. The Meroitic script, still not fully understood, hides a story waiting to be told. And farther inland, Great Zimbabwe massive stone enclosures and towers built without mortar, in southern Africa. The ruins puzzled early explorers who refused to believe Africans could have built such structures. But they did. The evidence is irrefutable. A civilization rich in trade, in cattle, in gold. A network that reached the Swahili coast, that traded with Arabs, Indians, even Chinese. Across oceans, far from Eurasia's web. These civilizations rose not in imitation, but in parallel. They solved the same problems: how to feed people, how to store surplus, how to organize labor, how to keep peace, how to find meaning each in their own way. They are not side notes to history. They are the other half of the story. The half we are only just beginning to remember, and perhaps, in their silence, there is a lesson. That greatness does not always shout. That empire is not always written in stone or crowned in gold. Sometimes, it is carried in rhythm, in ritual, in rain-carved valleys and firelit songs passed down from tongue to tongue, from ancestor to child. Tonight, as you rest your head and listen to the long breath of the past, remember this: civilization is not a single river, it is a delta, 1,000 currents, all flowing forward, all converging into us. And we are not outside that stream. We are floating in it, still moving, still remembering, still becoming. Civilization is rarely born from comfort. It does not spring from ease or luxury. It emerges from pressure, from the need to organize, to survive, to hold back chaos with structure, meaning, and belief. As we continue our slow descent into the layers of history, we come to understand that what we call ancient was once alive with tension, ambition, fear, and brilliance. Civilizations are not simply built, they are forged. And as the early fires of culture blazed across the river valleys and mountains of the old and new worlds, another force stirred, one that would forever reshape the human journey: trade. Long before coins clinked in markets or ships crisscrossed the Mediterranean, people bartered, journeyed, exchanged goods, yes, but also language, technology, and myth. Even the earliest civilizations did not live in isolation. The moment one society learned to farm or spin cloth or smelt bronze, the knowledge began to ripple outward, carried on foot, on camelback, across deserts. Overseas. The ancient Near East was a web of such movement. In the Levant, nestled between the great powers of Egypt and Mesopotamia, the Phoenicians emerged not as conquerors, but as traders. Their cities Tyre, Sidon, Byblus clung to the coast like barnacles, watching the horizon, sending ships farther than anyone thought possible. Their wood cedar was prized. Their dyes, especially purple, were rare and costly. But their greatest gift to civilization was not material. It was written. The Phoenicians gave us the alphabet, a system not of hundreds of symbols but of a few dozen. Sounds, not syllables, letters, not pictures. It spread quickly, first among sailors and merchants, then among scribes and kings. The Greeks adopted it. The Romans inherited it. And we still use it today, every time we write a name or read a sign or whisper a secret. Picture it, a scribe on a Phoenician ship, carving letters into wax or ink onto parchment, recording contracts, names, prayers. He has no idea that he is helping create the foundation of literacy for generations to come. He is simply working. But history remembers. While the Phoenicians sailed the seas, another civilization flourished inland. Among hills and highlands and golden fields, the Hittite based. In Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, the Hittites were fierce and pragmatic. They mastered chariot warfare, built massive fortifications, and dared to challenge the great Egyptian Empire on equal terms. At the Battle of Kadesh around 1274 BCE, the Hittites and Egyptians clashed in one of the earliest recorded battles in history. It ended in something astonishing. Not just blood, but diplomacy. A treaty. Two powers agreeing to coexist. The Hittites were also early adopters of Una material that would, in time, replace bronze and usher in a new age. It was harder, more plentiful, more durable. And once that secret spread, the balance of power shifted forever. But power is always a borrowed thing. The Hittite Empire eventually crumbled, like so many others, into silence and ruin. And in that silence, new voices emerged to the south of the Hittites and west of the Mesopotamians. A small, often overlooked people were shaping a story that would one day dominate much of the globe, not through empire or trade, but through belief. These were the Israelites. Unlike their neighbors, they did not build ziggurats or pyramids. They left few monumental traces. But they wrote their text stories of exile and covenant, of prophets and laws, of creation and destruction, the foundation for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Imagine a tent in the desert, a single candle flickering beside a scroll. A boy learning the stories of Abraham, of Moses, of David. These stories would cross centuries and continents, forming the ethical and spiritual backbone of billions of lives. A different kind of civilization, not built with bricks, but with words. In the East, around the same time, India was experiencing one of its most transformative periods, the Vedic Age. After the decline of the Indus Valley civilization, new peoples and cultures flowed into the subcontinent. Among them, Indo-Aryan migrants who brought with them sacred hymns, rituals, and a complex social hierarchy that would eventually evolve into the caste system. The Vedas, ancient scriptures, composed in Sanskrit, are not merely religious texts. They are a window into a world of pastoral life, sacrifice, philosophy, and cosmic order. The Rig Veda, the oldest of them, speaks of the universe's creation, the roles of the gods, the duties of humankind. Unlike the rigid divine kingship of Egypt or the state-controlled religion of Mesopotamia, the Vedic worldview was fluid, philosophical. The gods were not tyrants, but cosmic forces, ever-changing, often contradictory. There was no single story, but many. The seeds of Hinduism were being planted not in temples of stone, but in chants carried by wind and voice, passed from guru to student, from fire altar to forest hermit. And then came a shift. The cities returned. Urban life re-emerged with the rise of the Mahayanapadas, great kingdoms and republics of ancient India. Political experimentation flourished. Some states were monarchies. Others, like the Vajji Confederacy, were closer to early democracies. It was in this environment of intellectual energy that two figures emerged, each in search of truth, each destined to change the world. First was Siddhartha Gautama the Buddha. Born a prince, he renounced wealth and comfort to seek an end to suffering. His path led him to a simple insight. Desire leads to suffering, and liberation comes from letting go. Buddhism spread not through conquest, but through curiosity. Monks walked from village to village, teaching the Four Noble Truths, building monasteries, translating texts. Then came Mahavira, the great teacher of Jainism, who taught so absolute that even harming an insect was a moral breach. In an age of empires, these two figures turned inward and, in doing so, reshaped the spiritual landscape of Asia for thousands of years. While India was awakening, China was stirring once again, now under the Zhou dynasty, which had overthrown the Shang and instituted the idea that would guide Chinese thought for generations. The mandate of heaven. This was not divine right, but divine responsibility. The Zhou, though fragmented in later years, presided over one of the most intellectually fertile periods in Chinese history, the Spring and Autumn period and the Warring States era. It was during this time that thinkers like Confucius and Laozi lived. Confucius did not preach of gods, but of order, family, ritual, responsibility. His teachings became the bedrock of Chinese governance and society, not through force, but through tradition. Meanwhile, Laozi offered a softer path. Let the world be as it is. Don't force the river flow with it. While others built walls and palaces, China built philosophy. And it would carry that inheritance for centuries to come. Now let us drift west again, across sea and mountain, to a small rocky land of divided city-states, where reason and rhetoric would one day change the very idea of thought itself. Ancient Greece. But before Socrates asked questions or Plato wrote dialogues, before Athens raised its Parthenon or Sparta trained its warriors, Greece was just recovering from its own dark age. Writing had vanished. The Mycenaean palaces were dust. Yet, memory remained, passed down in oral epics sung by bards beside firelight, whispered in courts and taverns. The Iliad, the Odyssey, Homer's world. Were these just stories, or windows into a vanished past? Either way, they told of honor, wrath, fate, and the fragile thread of life. They stitched together a people. They laid the foundation for identity. As Greek city-states began to rise again, they carried with them a legacy not of empire, but of experiment. Athens would birth democracy, flawed, limited, yet revolutionary. Corinth would build wealth. Sparta would embrace discipline. And all would contribute to a culture of inquiry that would, in time, change not just Europe, but the world. But that is a story still forming on the horizon. For now, as we pause in this great journey, let us listen to the hum beneath history. Steady rhythm of cities built and broken, of names remembered and forgotten, of peoples reaching out from the soil of the earth toward something greater than themselves. Civilization is not a destination. It is the walk itself, always becoming, always unfolding, always calling us back. Civilization is not a singular flame. It is a constellation, points of light, scattered across the dark canvas of time, flickering independently, sometimes rising together, sometimes vanishing into silence, but always leaving a trace. And as we press deeper into the past, those points grow more numerous, more connected, more complex. The ancient world was not a quiet place. It pulsed with argument and ambition, with music and memory, with invention and impermanence. When we last looked, Greece was waking up. recovering from its long dark age, it was beginning to lay the foundations not only of buildings, but of thought itself. A civilization whose greatest export would not be gold or grain, but ideas. But even as Athens built its temples and Sparta forged its soldiers, they were not alone in their corner of the world. Across the Aegean Sea, to the east, a mighty empire had risen so vast, so structured, and so enduring, that its name would echo across history with a sense of both fear and fascination. Persia, the Achaemenid Empire, founded by Cyrus the Great in the 6th century BCE, was not the world's first empire, but it was the first to envision empire on a truly global scale. From the mountains of modern-day Iran to the edges of India, from the sands of Egypt to the coastlines of Anatolia, Persia ruled not just with might, but with an idea that empire could be both vast and orderly. Cyrus was not a conqueror in the traditional mold. When he took Babylon in 539 BCE, he did not slaughter its people or burn its temples. Instead, he declared himself liberator. He restored local gods to their shrines. He issued decrees in multiple languages. He even allowed exiled peoples, such as the Jews, held in Babylonian captivity, to return to their homeland. He was called the Father by his own people, and even his enemies remembered him with an awed respect. The Cyrus Cylinder, often regarded as an early charter of human rights, declared not dominion through fear, but rule through tolerance. Yet Cyrus was only the beginning. Darius, the Great, his successor, took the empire and refined it. He built the Royal Road, stretching over 1,500 miles, where imperial messengers could travel faster than many armies. He standardized coinage, weights, and laws. He divided the empire into satrapies provinces, governed by a satrap, royal agent of the king. And he built Persepolis, a city, not merely of power, but of pageantry. Columns that rose like forests of stone. Walls carved with processions of dignitaries from every corner of the realm. The Persians ruled not by erasing local cultures, but by absorbing them. Egyptians kept their gods. Babylonians kept their scribes. Greeks, when they eventually came under Persian rule, were even allowed to keep many of their customs. But such power always invites resistance, and Greece, fiercely independent, fiercely fragmented, was not eager to bow. The Persian wars would follow Marathon and Thermopylae, Salamis and Plataea, where the small, quarrelsome city-states of Greece stood against the might of Persia and, against all odds, survived. From that clash would emerge a sense of identity, especially for Athens. Democracy would blossom, driven by the belief that free men could govern themselves. The Parthenon would rise. Tragedy and comedy would flourish in open-air theaters. Philosophers would begin to question not only the world, but the very act of questioning Socrates with his unsettling questions, Plato with his cave of illusions, Aristotle cataloging the natural world and defining logic itself. Imagine a group of students in the soft light of a courtyard, listening to a teacher who insists that wisdom begins with admitting ignorance. There are no temples here, no thought. The elevation of mind over might. That too is civilization. But for all its brilliance, Greek civilization was fragile. Wars between city-states weakened them. Sparta and Athens tore each other down in the Peloponnesian War. Alliances broke. Trust eroded, and into that power vacuum stepped a man who would change everything. Alexander of Macedon, tutored by Aristotle, trained in war, driven by an unquenchable hunger for glory. Alexander united the fractious Greeks and then turned his gaze eastward. He crossed into Asia Minor, shattered Persian armies, took Egypt without a fight, and finally met Darius III in a series of battles that brought the mighty Achaemenid Empire to its knees. He did not stop. He marched to the edges of India until his men, exhausted and homesick, begged to return. Alexander did not live long. He died at just 32, but in a span of barely a decade, he had created one of the largest empires the world had ever seen. But Alexander's true legacy was not just territorial. It was cultural. Hellenism, Greek language, art, architecture, and philosophy spread across the Near East. Cities like Alexandria in Egypt became centers of learning. The Library of Alexandria itself, a dream of collecting all human knowledge, was born of this new era. Ideas from East and West met, mixed, and transformed. Sculpture from India began to adopt Greek realism. Science, medicine, astronomy, and ethics merged in ways never seen before. It was a civilizational fusion: Greek thought with Persian administration, Egyptian mystery with Babylonian mathematics. Meanwhile, in the West, another civilization was stirring, slow, methodical, relentless. Rome. It began as a small village by a river, the Tiber, a monarchy, then a republic, built on civic duty, law, and the power of the citizen's soldier. Its people were not philosophers like the Greeks, nor mystics like the Persians. They were engineers, administrators, soldiers. Rome built roads that stretched across continents, aqueducts that brought water for miles, a legal system that still influences us today. Their republic was not perfect. Slavery was rampant. Women were excluded, but the idea that citizens had a voice, that law was greater than any one man, would echo long after the republic fell. And it would fall. Civil wars tore it apart. Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon, and with that step, the republic became empire. Augustus, his adopted heir, became the first emperor, not a king, he insisted, but princeps, the first citizen. It was the beginning of the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. For 200 years, the empire flourished. Its borders stretched from Britain to Egypt, from Spain to Syria. Its cities boasted baths, theaters, arenas, forums. Latin, its language, spread like wildfire, rooting itself so deeply that even today, it lives on in the Romance languages. But Roman civilization was not just Roman. That they absorbed the Greek gods, renamed them, reimagined them. They adopted Greek arts, literature, even tutors for their children. They took from the Etruscans, the Egyptians, the Carthaginians. Rome was not pure. It was a patchwork, stitched together by conquest, but held by law, by loyalty, by the idea of Rome itself. And at the edge of this empire, in a quiet corner of Judea, another story was unfolding, one that would grow from the sands of a small province into the soul of an empire, and eventually, a cornerstone of Western civilization. Christianity, born of Jewish prophecy, shaped in part by Hellenistic philosophy, and spread by Roman roads. The teachings of Jesus of Nazareth were at first a whisper, a message of humility, compassion, and inner transformation. His death at Roman hands did not end his movement, it galvanized it. His followers, especially Paul of Tarsus, took that message across the empire. They wrote letters. They built communities. They endured persecution. And eventually, they triumphed by the 4th century CE, under Emperor Constantine. Christianity became not just tolerated but imperial. The faith of outcasts became the faith of emperors. And that is the strange, unpredictable arc of civilization. That which begins in silence may one day speak louder than any sword. That which is built on stone may crumble, while a story, a thought, a word can endure for millennia. And as we continue through this long night of history, we begin to understand that civilization is not just about cities and kings. It is about belief, memory, connection, the things that outlast fire and flood. And time.you, listening now, are part of that story. Because to remember is to keep it alive, and we have so much more to remember. Civilizations rarely vanish overnight. They fade. Not all at once, but piece by piece temples crumble, markets fall silent, languages shift, and memories become myth. But sometimes, even after the last torch has gone out, echoes continue in ways no one expects. The idea of Rome, for instance, far outlived its emperors. Even as the empire fractured, fell, and scattered into rival kingdoms, people still spoke its name with reverences, though to speak Rome was to summon the very spirit of civilization itself. But before Rome fell, it transformed. The once pagan empire had embraced a new faith, Christianity, and this would shape not only its twilight, but the entire medieval world to come. The emperors became defenders of the faith. Bishops gained power once reserved for generals. And the cross began to outshine the eagle dot. By the time the Western Roman Empire collapsed, in the 5th century CE, swept away by waves of migration, rebellion, and internal decay, had already planted seeds that would blossom into something else entirely. Civilization did not disappear. It moved in the east. Rome did not fall at all. There, in the city of Byzantium, renamed Constantinople, the Eastern Roman Empire endured for nearly 1,000 more years. It was still Roman in name, but its soul had shifted. Greek became the dominant language. Christian theology was woven into every law, every building, every war. It was a fusion of old empire and new belief. The Byzantine Empire saw itself as the last torchbearer of classical civilization. Its emperors, clad in gold and shadow, ruled from marble halls, flanked by mosaics that shimmered like frozen fire. They copied ancient manuscripts. They debated doctrine with the fury of philosophers. They fought wars not only for land, but for the soul of the faith. The crowning jewel of Byzantium was the Hagia Sophia, constructed under Emperor Justinian. With a dome that seemed to float in air, it became the very symbol of divine presence on earth. It was neither temple nor basilica. It was something more, an architectural prayer carved into stone and light. Yet even the greatest cities are not immune to time. Byzantium would endure sieges, crusades, and betrayal, until at last, in 1453, it fell to the Ottoman Turks. But the story does not end there. The city, now Istanbul, would remain a living bridge between worlds, between East and West, between the ancient and the modern. But let us now leave the marble towers of Constantinople and look elsewhere, to the north and west, where new powers were rising from the ashes of the old, in the rugged forests and storm-beaten coasts of northern Europe. The so-called barbarians who had once brought Rome to its knees began to settle, to organize, to build. The Franks, under Clovis, carved out kingdoms. The Anglo-Saxons spread across Britain. The Visigoths ruled Spain. And above them all loomed the Catholic Church, no longer persecuted, now powerful. In the year 800 CE, a moment occurred that symbolized this shift. Pope Leo III crowned Charlemagne, king of the Franks, as emperor of the Romans. The Holy Roman Empire was born, not Roman in administration, nor holy in origin, but a powerful idea. That civilization, law, faith, literacy could still be guided by the legacy of Rome. Charlemagne's empire promoted monasteries, copied books, created schools. Latin lived on in scripture and scholarship. It was not a return to the grandeur of ancient Rome, but it was a rebirth of structure, of continuity, a fragile bridge across a turbulent time. Meanwhile, far to the east, another civilization was rising quietly, steadily, with discipline and vision. China, under the Tang dynasty, which began in the 7th century CE, China experienced a golden age unlike anything the West had seen in centuries. It was a time of poets and painters, of engineers and scholars. Cities like Chang'an pulsed with life, diversity, and order. Merchants from Arabia, Persia, and Central Asia walked its markets. Ideas flowed as freely as silken spices. This was not a civilization rediscovering itself. It had never been lost. Temp's China developed woodblock printing. It refined paper production. It established complex civil service exams that tested knowledge of Confucian texts, ensuring that officials were chosen not by birth, but by learning. It was, in many ways, a meritocracy centuries ahead of its time, and just as impressive was its openness. The Tang court welcomed Buddhism from India, Islam from the West, and Christian missionaries from as far as Byzantium. It was a cosmopolitan age, where travelers could move safely from Baghdad to Beijing along the Silk Road, an artery of exchange, not just of goods, but of ideas. This route connected civilizations in ways unimaginable before linking the Mediterranean to the Chinese heartland. Along it moved glass and jade, tea and gunpowder, but also stories, medicines, music, and myths. A true civilizational web. Further south, in the islands and peninsulas of Southeast Asia, new kingdoms rose. Srivijaya, Majapahit, and others built on trade, maritime power, and spiritual fusion. Hinduism, Buddhism, and later Islam shaped their temples, courts, and epics. In Java, the temple of Borobudur stood as a mountainous mandala, a sacred geometry carved in stone where pilgrims could climb and walk through Buddhist teachings without ever opening a book. In India, the Gupta Empire had already passed, but its influence lingered. Hinduism matured into rich philosophical schools, Vedanta, Yoga, Sankhya. Temples were now not just places of worship, but centers of social and artistic life. Mathematics flourished. The concept of zero, the decimal system, and early forms of algebra emerged, gifts to global civilization. While these developments unfolded in Asia, Africa too nurtured her own empires, often overlooked, but never insignificant. In West Africa, the Ghana Empire rose, rooted in trade. It controlled vast stretches of the Sahara's southern edge and became wealthy not through conquest, but commerce, especially gold and salt. Caravans stretched across the dunes, laden with goods and guarded by warriors. By the 13th century, Ghana would give way to Mali, whose most famous ruler Mansa Musa would astonish the world with his pilgrimage to Mecca. Tales of his wealth, his retinue, his generosity spread across continents. In Timbuktu, he funded schools, libraries, and mosques. The city became a beacon of learning, proof that civilization did not require Roman ruins or Greek columns. It could thrive in the desert. In East Africa, the Swahili coast bustled with city-states like Kilwa, Mombasa, and Zanzibar thriving on trade with Arabia, India, and China. Their culture was a blend of African, Arab, and Persian influences, and their architecture, coral stone houses, mosques, carved wooden doors testified 2 centuries of sophistication. And in the Americas, while the Maya civilization had waned, new powers were rising. In central Mexico, the city of Tenochtitlan would soon rise from the marshes of Lake Texcoco, and in the Andes, the Incas would continue expanding their empire, building roads and terraced fields, connecting mountain to mountain. What links all these places, despite their distance, their diversity, their different climates, and calendars, is one shared instinct: the drive to order chaos, to plant in the dust and reap, not just food, but beauty, belief, and belonging. Civilization is never still. It flows, cracks, adapts. It is passed like a torch, sometimes fumbled, sometimes clutched too tightly, sometimes extinguished, only to be lit again elsewhere. In a different shape, a different voice. Even now, as you drift deeper into the quiet, that torch flickers still. It is lit in every classroom, in every library, in every whispered prayer and ancient song. It burns in stone ruins and in stories passed from grandmothers to children. It survives, not because it is strong, but because we remember, and that more than any pyramid or monument is the true heart of civilization. Civilization is not merely the grandeur of kings, nor the monuments left behind in stone and bronze. It is, more often, found in the daily rituals, the weaving of cloth, the planting of seed, the rhythm of drums in a village square, the call to prayer echoing across a river valley. It is in what people cherish, preserve, and carry forward. It is in how we organize ourselves to meet the needs of not just survival, but meaning. As we step deeper into the middle centuries of the first millennium, we do not find a dark age, but rather a world busy with building of systems, of networks, of faith. Civilization, by this point, was no longer a rarity. It had become a pattern, appearing in parallel across continents, each rooted in its own soil, each answering the universal questions in uniquely human ways. We return now to the Islamic world of civilization, born in the 7th century in the deserts of Arabia, which would, in less than 100 years, stretch from Spain in the west to the Indus River in the east. It began with the Prophet Muhammad, born in Mecca, a city of traders and pilgrims. In a society fractured by tribal loyalties, he brought a message of unity, submission to a single God, and justice for the oppressed. His revelations, collected in the Quran, not only shaped religious life, but became the foundation for an entire civilization. After his death, the early caliphs of the Islamic community expanded rapidly. But this was not a conquest of destruction. In many places, Islamic civilization took root and flourished with stunning speed because it offered structure, protection, and a universal language, Arabic. Under the Abbasid Caliphate, centered in Baghdad, Islamic civilization entered what many call its golden age. And it was golden not because of wealth alone, but because of knowledge. Baghdad became the beating heart of the intellectual world. The House of Wisdom, a great library and academy, welcomed scholars from every background, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Zoroastrian, to translate and debate the works of the Greeks, the Persians, the Indians. It was here that ancient texts, nearly lost to the West, were preserved, works of Plato, Aristotle, Galen, Euclid. It was here that original thought flourished. In mathematics, algebra was developed. In astronomy, observatories mapped the stars with remarkable accuracy. In medicine, thinkers like Al-Razi and Ibn Sina wrote encyclopedias that would remain in use for centuries. Islamic art and architecture also blossomed, marked by intricate geometric designs, flowing calligraphy, and the graceful symmetry of mosques with soaring domes and minarets. Cities like Cordoba, Cairo, and Samarkand shone like jewels, places where faith and science walked hand in hand, where the sacred was not separate from the rational, but an extension of it. And this was not confined to the Arab world. The Turks, Berbers, Persians all embraced Islam and added to its cultural wealth. In Spain, under Muslim rule, libraries held hundreds of thousands of volumes. Music, poetry, and philosophy mingled in the winding streets of Al-Andalus. Yet even as the Islamic world reached its zenith, Christian Europe was undergoing a quiet transformation of its own. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire, Europe had fractured into small kingdoms, but by the 11th and 12th centuries, a new stability began to emerge. Monasteries preserved ancient texts, kings established stronger institutions, and the church became not just a spiritual force, but a political one. Cathedrals rose with their vaulted ceilings and stained glass, not only as places of worship, but as symbols of ambition and faith. The Crusades began violent, complex campaigns meant to recapture Jerusalem, but which also brought Europeans into closer contact with the Islamic world. With that contact came knowledge, spices, technologies, and a rediscovery of classical wisdom. It was a painful, often brutal exchange, but it was an exchange nonetheless. Trade also reawakened. Cities like Venice and Genoa grew rich on commerce. Guilds emerged, banks began to form, and a new class, the bourgeoisie, started to rise, quietly reshaping the social order. Meanwhile, in the East, China had entered another golden era under the Song dynasty, while Europe was still emerging from its post-Roman sleep. Song China was achieving extraordinary things. It had gunpowder, movable type printing, advanced steel production, a robust examination system, and some of the most urbanized and literate populations in the world. Its economy was one of the most sophisticated on Earth. It used paper money. It had vast canal systems linking cities and regions. It was a place where an ordinary citizen might read poetry, visit a temple, and debate philosophy all before dinner. The Chinese civil service, based on rigorous exams, selected officials from across society, making government not a matter of birth, but of learning. Artists painted landscapes with delicate brushwork. Poets like Su, she explored the tension between duty and longing, between the world and the spirit. Neo-Confucianism emerged, an attempt to reconcile Confucian ethics with Buddhist metaphysics. And then came the Mongols. From the vast steppes of Central Asia, under the leadership of Genghis Khan, the Mongols exploded onto the world stage in the 13th century. Their empire would become the largest contiguous land empire in history, stretching from Korea to Hungary, from the Siberian forests to the deserts of Persia. They were ruthless in war-raising cities, executing kings but surprisingly pragmatic. In rule, once conquered, regions were often allowed to govern themselves as long as they paid tribute. And more than that, the Mongols reconnected the world. Their empire allowed merchants, travelers, and ideas to flow more freely than ever before. The Silk Road was safer than it had been in centuries. Goods from China made their way to Europe. Papermaking, compass navigation, and printing all moved westward. And from the west came envoys, missionaries, and eventually, even explorers like Marco Polo, who would carry stories of Mongol cities and Chinese splendor back to curious European audiences. Yet the Mongols also spread something else, something far less visible: disease the black. Death likely carried by fleas on rats traveling along Mongol trade routes swept through Asia and into Europe in the 14th century. It killed tens of millions, a third or more of Europe's population. Cities were emptied, entire families vanished. Faith was shaken. Institutions faltered. But even this devastation brought transformation. Labor became more valuable. Feudal bonds weakened. Innovations in medicine and hygiene slowly followed. And perhaps most importantly, in the centuries after the plague, a new curiosity took hold in Europe, a hunger for knowledge, art, and ancient wisdom. The Renaissance was coming. It would begin not with swords or kings, but with a shift in vision. A return to the texts of Plato and Cicero. A rediscovery of anatomy, perspective, and proportion. Artists like Giotto and later Leonardo da Vinci began to see the world not only as divine, but as knowable. It was not a sudden break from the past, but a flowering of seeds planted long ago by Greeks, by Romans, by Arabs and Persians, by Chinese inventors and Indian mathematicians. Civilization, once again, was about to change shape. It would move faster. It would reach farther. It would begin to question not just how to build, but why. But for now, as we rest in this moment between plague and progress, between empire and invention, we are reminded that history is not a march forward. It is a slow turning, a spiral, a weaving together of all who came before. And as night deepens, we lie in the company of the countless who once dreamed beneath different stars, in different lands, speaking different tongues but dreaming, always, of the same thing: a better world, more lasting order, a civilization that might finally endure. The story of civilization is a story of light and shadow, of leaps and setbacks, of creations and destructions. As we move into the later Middle Ages, the world was a patchwork of cultures, kingdoms, and empires, each telling its own tale of power, faith, and innovation. The centuries between the fall of Rome and the dawn of the Renaissance were neither dark nor simple. They were complex, rich, and endlessly fascinating. In Europe, the feudal system had taken root. Lords and vassals, castles and manors, knights and serf soul, bound by intricate relationships of loyalty and obligation. Life was harsh and uncertain, but also marked by community, ceremony, and the slow growth of towns. Monasteries became not just places of worship, but centers of learning. Monks copied manuscripts by candlelight, preserving the knowledge of the ancients for future generations. The Gothic cathedrals' soaring structures of stone and stained glass rose as statements of faith and human aspiration. Their flying buttresses and pointed arches allowed walls to soar higher, windows to grow larger, bathing the interiors in colored light that seemed to bring heaven closer to earth. Meanwhile, the Kingdom of France was rising. England was forging a new identity. The Holy Roman Empire was a patchwork of duchies and principalities, often at odds, but linked by shared traditions. The Crusades, while initially military expeditions, became cultural exchanges that brought new ideas, art, and technology back to Europe. In the East, the Mongol Empire's vast expanse had fractured, but its legacy endured. The Yuan dynasty, established by Kublai Khan in China, ruled over a multicultural empire that blended Mongol, Chinese, and Central Asian traditions. Trade flourished. Marco Polo's accounts of this realm would fuel European imaginations for centuries. The Ming dynasty would later restore Han Chinese rule, initiating a period of remarkable cultural achievement and exploration. The voyages of Zheng He, with his massive treasure fleets, reached as far as East Africa, projecting Chinese influence and trade across the Indian Ocean. South Asia, too, was a land of vibrant kingdoms and empires. The Delhi Sultanate introduced Islamic governance and culture to much of northern India, leading to centuries of interaction and fusion with Hindu traditions. The arts flourished, architecture blossomed with the construction of magnificent mosques and palaces, and Sufi mystics brought new spiritual perspectives. Africa's civilizations continued to develop in impressive ways. The Kingdom of Ethiopia, with its ancient Christian traditions, stood as a bastion of faith and culture in the highlands. Great Zimbabwe rose in southern Africa, its massive stone ruins testifying to a sophisticated society engaged in trade and craftsmanship. The Americas, separated by oceans, nurtured civilizations with their own grandeur. The Aztecs in central Mexico built towering temples, vibrant markets, and a society steeped in ritual and art. The Incas, high in the Andes, engineered terraced fields, complex road systems, and a centralized administration capable of managing vast distances and diverse peoples. What unites these distant peoples across time and space is their ceaseless quest for order and meaning. Throughout this sprawling tapestry, the thread of human curiosity weaves unbroken. Whether in the quipu knots of the Incas or the illuminated manuscripts of medieval Europe, in the observatories of Islamic scholars or the philosophical gardens of Chinese literati, civilization is the sum of countless acts of creation, adaptation, and preservation. Yet even as cities rose and empires expanded, change was inevitable. The pressures of population, environment, politics, and contact with others brought tensions and transformations. Trade routes shifted. Dynasties fell. Religions spread and splintered. New technologies emerged, from the mechanical clocks of Europe to the compass that revolutionized navigation. And then, from the late 14th century onward, a powerful new force began to stir, a force that would accelerate the pace of history and reshape the world in profound ways. The Renaissance, the rebirth of classical learning and humanism, the flowering of art, science, and exploration. A rediscovery of the ancient texts preserved by Muslim scholars, combined with new inventions and critical inquiry, ignited a creative explosion. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael dared to imagine the human form and spirit as never before. Writers such as Dante, Petrarch, and Machiavelli explored the complexities of the human condition and power. Science began to break free from ancient dogmas. Nicolaus Copernicus challenged the geocentric universe. Galileo used the telescope to peer into the heavens. The printing press, invented by Johannes Gutenberg, spread knowledge faster than ever. Explorers set sail into unknown seas. Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, Ferdinand Magellan ventured beyond familiar horizons, opening new routes and encounters between continents. This era was not simply a rediscovery of the past, it was a transformation. The human mind began to see itself differently, not as a passive observer, but as an active agent, capable of shaping its destiny. And yet, this awakening came at a cost. The age of exploration led to colonization, conquest, and cultural upheaval. Civilizations that had thrived for centuries faced new threats: disease, warfare, displacement. Still, the relentless human desire to connect, understand, and create continued. As the Renaissance matured, it gave way to the Enlightenment, the Age of Reason. Philosophers such as Descartes, Locke, and Voltaire questioned authority and tradition. Ideas of liberty, equality, and democracy took root. The modern world was being born. But all of this, our entire journey through ancient civilizations, empires, and cultural blooms, reminds us of one fundamental truth: that civilization is a collective story. A story written by countless hands, voices, and minds, each contributing a verse to an ever-unfolding epic. And as you listen, you become part of this ongoing narrative, a witness to the past, a participant in the present, and a creator of the future. To understand the tapestry of ancient civilizations, one must not only look at grand empires or towering monuments, but also delve into the threads of culture, belief, and everyday life that bound people together across millennia. The echoes of ancient rituals, languages, and philosophies resonate in the foundations of modern society, subtly shaping who we are. As we traverse further into the vast timeline, it becomes clear that no civilization stands isolated. The ancient world was interconnected in ways both tangible and subtle, tied together by trade, migration, conquest, and the human impulse to communicate and understand. Consider the Silk Road, not merely as a trade route for silk and spices, but as a bridge for ideas and innovation. Along its vast stretch spanning deserts, mountains, and seas, travelers carried not only goods but stories, religious beliefs, technological knowledge, and artistic styles. Buddhism, for example, spread from India into Central Asia, China, Korea, and Japan through this corridor. Monks journeyed with scriptures and relics, establishing monasteries and influencing local cultures. The art of Gandhara, blending Greek and Buddhist elements, is a testament to this syncretism of fusion, where Hellenistic realism met Eastern spirituality. Meanwhile, the movement of papermaking technology, invented in China during the Han Dynasty, revolutionized communication. This innovation traveled westward, reaching the Islamic world by the 8th century, and eventually Europe by the 12th century. transforming how knowledge was recorded and shared. In the Americas, parallel networks of communication and exchange developed among the Maya, Aztec, and Inca civilizations. While isolated from Eurasian contact until much later, these cultures built complex urban centers, sophisticated agriculture, and rich spiritual traditions. The Maya, flourishing in Mesoamerica, constructed towering pyramids and developed a highly accurate calendar system, intertwining astronomy and ritual. Their hieroglyphic writing captured history and myth, though much was lost to time. The Aztecs, inheritors of earlier Mesoamerican cultures, forged a sprawling empire centered on Tenochtitlan, a city built on a lake with causeways and canals. Their society was hierarchical and religiously intense, with rituals that reflected a deep cosmology centered on balance and sacrifice. In the Andean highlands, the Inca established an empire remarkable for its administrative sophistication and engineering prowess. Their vast road networks connected diverse environments, from deserts to mountains to rainforests, enabling effective governance and rapid communication. Quipus knotted strings served as a system of record-keeping, a unique form of data storage, unlike any writing system elsewhere across the globe. These civilizations thrived in environments as varied as deserts, rainforests, steppes, and mountains. Their shared achievements, urban planning, written language, agriculture, religion, speak to a universal human drive to organize, create meaning, and leave a mark. Language, too, was a powerful unifier and divider. Ancient scripts such as cuneiform, hieroglyphics, Sanskrit, Chinese characters, and the later alphabets reflect not only linguistic complexity but cultural identity. The transition from pictographic to phonetic writing systems marked a significant leap, making literacy more accessible and enabling broader dissemination of ideas. Philosophy and religion formed the backbone of many civilizations, from the polytheistic pantheons of Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Greece, to the monotheistic faiths of Israel and later Islam and Christianity. Belief systems shaped governance, social norms, and artistic expression. In India, the Vedic texts laid the foundation for Hinduism, while Buddhism and Jainism challenged and enriched spiritual discourse. In China, Confucianism and Taoism offered contrasting visions of order and harmony, influencing family structures and governance. The arts, too, were a mirror of civilization's values and aspirations. Sculpture, painting, poetry, music, and architecture conveyed stories and ideals. The Parthenon in Athens stood as a tribute to human proportion and divine harmony. The pyramids of Egypt echoed eternal power. The intricate patterns of Islamic mosques celebrated the infinite and the abstract. Technological innovation was relentless. The wheel, irrigation, metallurgy, shipbuilding, and mathematics transformed societies. The Sumerians invented the earliest known writing. The Egyptians mastered monumental stone construction. The Babylonians developed early forms of algebra and astronomy. The Chinese crafted gunpowder and the compass. Civilization, in essence, is a continuous conversation between past and present, innovation and tradition. It is a tapestry woven from countless individual threads: farmers, priests, warriors, artisans, scholars, all contributing to a shared human story, As you absorb this vast panorama, you realize that ancient civilizations are not distant relics, but living legacies. They inform our politics, our beliefs, our art, and even the languages we speak. They are the foundation stones beneath the bustling cities of today, the silent whispers behind modern institutions, the roots of cultures that continue to evolve in exploring their stories. We reconnect with the very essence of humanity, the drive to understand ourselves, to build communities, and to reach beyond the limits of our own time. And in doing so, we honor the endless journey of civilization, a journey still unfolding, still beckoning us forward into the unknown. The story of ancient civilizations is a testament to the resilience, ingenuity, and diversity of the human spirit. Across the vast expanse of time and geography, humanity has continually sought ways to understand the world, to impose order upon chaos, and to find meaning in the mysteries of existence. As we reach the Middle Ages of our journey through history, it is important to remember that civilizations did not rise or fall in isolation. The ebb and flow of empires was shaped by an intricate web of interactions through trade, conquest, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. Take, for instance, the rise of the Ottoman Empire, which emerged in the late 13th century in Anatolia. From modest beginnings, the Ottomans would build a vast and enduring empire that bridged east and west. Their capital, Constantinople, renamed Istanbul, became a crossroads of culture, commerce, and religion. The Ottomans absorbed the legacies of Byzantium and Persia, while adding their own innovations in governance, architecture, and art. Under rulers like Suleiman the Magnificent, the empire reached unprecedented heights of power and cultural achievement. The architecture of Immerse graced the skyline with grand mosques and bridges, embodying a harmonious blend of function and beauty. The empire's legal and administrative systems ensured relative stability across diverse populations. Meanwhile, in the Indian subcontinent, the Mughal Empire rose to prominence in the 16th century. Founded by Babur, a descendant of Timur, and Genghis Khan, the Mughals synthesized Persian, Indian, and Central Asian influences to create a rich cultural milieu. The Taj Mahal, a masterpiece of architecture and love, stands as a symbol of their artistic patronage. The Mughals advanced agriculture, fostered literature in multiple languages, and supported religious tolerance under rulers like Akbar the Great. Their court was a vibrant center for poetry, music, and painting, blending Hindu and Muslim traditions. Across the Atlantic, the indigenous civilizations of the Americas continued to develop in their own rhythms. The Aztec Empire, with its capital at Tenochtitlan, was a marvel of urban planning and engineering. Its bustling markets, complex social hierarchy, and religious ceremonies illustrated a sophisticated society deeply connected to its environment. Farther south, the Inca Empire stretched along the Andean mountain range, mastering the challenges of high-altitude life with innovations like terracing, irrigation, and road systems that connected distant provinces. Their administrative efficiency was remarkable, and their religious beliefs centered around the sun god, interweaving spirituality into daily life. These civilizations, though separated by oceans and continents, share remarkable parallels in their pursuit of knowledge, governance, and cultural expression. Their legacies continue to influence modern societies in language, art, religion, and technology. As we reflect on these civilizations, it becomes clear that history is not a linear path, but a vast tapestry of human experiences. The threads of conquest and cooperation, tradition and innovation, faith and reason are intertwined. Civilization, at its core, is about connection between people, between ideas, and between generations. Today, as we stand on the shoulders of these giants, we carry forward their stories, their lessons, and their dreams. The monuments may erode, the languages may fade, but the essence of civilization, our shared quest to understand and shape the world, endures, and so the journey continues, ever forward, ever unfolding. Civilizations rise and fall, yet their legacies intertwine like the roots of ancient trees, nourishing the soil from which new societies grow. By the time we enter the early modern period, the threads of earlier empires, cultures, and philosophies have woven a complex fabric that spans continents and centuries. As Europe emerged from the Renaissance and stepped into the age of exploration, the world was poised for profound transformation, driven by curiosity, ambition, and new technologies such as the compass, printing press, and improved shipbuilding. Explorers set sail across unknown seas. Christopher Columbus's 1492 voyage, seeking a western route to Asia, instead encountered the Americas ushering in an era that would forever alter the globe. The encounters between Europeans and indigenous civilizations such as the Aztecs, Mayas, and Incas sparked exchanges of goods, ideas, and, tragically, devastating disease and conquest. The Columbian Exchange reshaped diets and economies worldwide. Potatoes and maize traveled eastward, while horses, wheat, and smallpox moved westward. The consequences were profound and irreversible, blending worlds previously separated by oceans. Meanwhile, the Ottoman Empire continued its dominance over much of southeastern Europe, Western Asia, and northern Africa. As guardians of key trade routes between East and West, they controlled the flow of spices, silk, and other prized commodities. Their cultural and religious influence remained formidable, producing magnificent works of art, literature, and architecture. In East Asia, the Ming dynasty gave way to the Qing dynasty in the mid-17th century. The Qing rulers consolidated vast territories, bringing stability and prosperity. Meanwhile, intellectual life flourished, as Confucianism remained central to governance, and new ideas from Europe introduced via Jesuit missionaries began to percolate. Africa to saw significant developments. The powerful empires of Songhai and Benin showcased advanced political structures, art, and trade networks. Coastal cities engaged actively with European traders, establishing complex relationships that would shape the continent's history for centuries. In the Americas, the European colonization and the rise of plantation economies profoundly altered indigenous societies and the landscape. The transatlantic slave trade forcibly brought millions of Africans across the ocean, adding a tragic and painful chapter to the story of civilization. Amidst these upheavals, new ideas about governance and human rights began to take root in Europe. The Enlightenment questioned long-held doctrines, advocating for liberty, equality, and reason. Thinkers like John Locke and Montesquieu inspired political revolutions that would reshape nations. The seeds sown by ancient civilizations, their systems of law, philosophy, science, and art continued to influence these modern movements. Democracy, republicanism, and humanism have roots that reach back thousands of years, threaded through the stories of Greece, Rome, Persia, China, and beyond. As the world grew more interconnected, the exchanges of goods and ideas accelerated. The rise of global trade networks, capitalism, and imperialism shaped the modern world's economic and political landscapes. Yet beneath these grand narratives lies the unbroken pulse of human endeavor, the striving to build communities, to understand nature, to create meaning. Civilizations are, ultimately, reflections of human aspiration and resilience. They are mirrors of our shared triumphs and tragedies. And as we continue to explore this vast story, it is clear that history is not merely a record of what was, but a guide to what might be. The past speaks to us through ruins and relics, through stories and songs, through art and ideas. It invites us to listen, to learn, and to carry forward the legacy of civilization with wisdom and care. As the centuries unfolded, the story of civilization became ever more intricate, a vast mosaic shaped by the movements of peoples, the rise and fall of empires, and the ebb and flow of ideas. What began with humble villages and scattered city-states gradually expanded into global networks of culture, commerce, and governance. The Renaissance had sparked a revival of classical knowledge, art, and human potential, while the age of exploration shattered old geographical boundaries. Europeans established colonies across the Americas, Africa, and Asia, spreading their languages, religions, and technologies, but also bringing conflict, displacement, and transformation. In Asia, powerful empires such as the Mughal in India and the Qing in China reached pinnacles of cultural and political achievement. The Mughals blended Persian artistry with Indian traditions, producing breathtaking architecture like the Taj Mahal and fostering vibrant courts of poetry and music. The Qing dynasty, expanding China's borders, reinforced Confucian principles, and managed one of the largest and most populous empires in history. Meanwhile, in the Islamic world, the Safavid and Ottoman empires shaped the cultural and political landscape of the Middle East. They sponsored magnificent architecture, advanced scholarship, and complex diplomatic relations with European powers. Balancing tradition with adaptation, Africa's rich history continued to unfold. Kingdoms like Dahomey and Ashanti displayed sophisticated governance and artistry, engaging in regional trade and resisting colonial incursions. The continent's diverse peoples maintained vibrant cultures despite the growing pressures of European expansion and the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade in the Americas. Indigenous societies faced catastrophic upheaval. The Aztec and Inca empires had been toppled by European conquerors, and the social fabric of countless native communities was irrevocably altered. Yet, indigenous resilience endured through adaptation, resistance, and cultural survival. At the same time, the Enlightenment ideals spreading through Europe laid the groundwork for revolutions in America and France, revolutions that would question monarchy and aristocracy and champion principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity. These political upheavals were deeply influenced by earlier philosophical traditions, including those of ancient Greece, Rome, and the Islamic Golden Age. science and technology advanced rapidly. The scientific revolution challenged old paradigms, introducing empirical observation and experimentation. Figures like Newton and Galileo transformed our understanding of the universe. Innovations in printing and communication spread new knowledge far and wide. Industrialization soon followed, reshaping economies, societies, and environments on a scale previously unimaginable. Cities grew, labor systems changed, and global connections intensified. The legacies of ancient civilizations' law, governance, mathematics, art were embedded deeply in this new world order. Yet, with progress came new challenges. Imperialism expanded European power but also sowed seeds of conflict, exploitation, and cultural suppression. The voices of colonized peoples struggled to be heard amid the tides of conquest and control. Amid this complexity, the essence of civilization remained the same: a collective human endeavor to create order, meaning, and beauty in a vast and often indifferent universe. Civilization is neither perfect nor inevitable. It is fragile, dynamic, and continuously shaped by the choices of individuals and societies. Our journey through the story of ancient civilizations reveals the profound interconnectedness of humanity across continents, cultures, and time. It is a story of shared knowledge and shared destiny, and as we listen closely to the whispers of the past, we gain the wisdom to shape the future. As we venture further into the story of human civilization, it becomes clear that the grand tapestry of history is woven from countless threads, some shining brightly, others frayed or lost, but all essential to the whole. Each ancient civilization, with its unique customs, innovations, and challenges, contributed to the evolving mosaic of human experience. Consider the profound influence of the Greco-Roman world. The ideas of democracy, law, philosophy, and art that emerged from ancient Greece and Rome continue to underpin modern political and cultural systems. The writings of Plato and Aristotle, Cicero and Seneca, form the intellectual bedrock of Western thought, shaping concepts of justice, governance, and ethics. Yet the Greco-Roman legacy was far from static. It was preserved, transformed, and transmitted by diverse cultures. The Byzantines maintained the heritage of Rome while infusing it with Christian theology and Greek language. Islamic scholars translated and expanded upon Greek philosophical and scientific works, ensuring their survival during Europe's early medieval centuries. This intellectual cross-pollination was crucial. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad, the universities of medieval Europe, and the vibrant courts of the Islamic empires were centers of learning where ideas traveled freely, inspiring new discoveries and artistic achievements. In Asia, ancient philosophies and religious traditions shaped societies in profound ways. Confucianism emphasized social harmony and filial piety, guiding Chinese governance and personal conduct for millennia. Taoism offered a vision of balance and natural order, influencing art, medicine, and spirituality. India's spiritual heritage, with Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism, provided rich frameworks for understanding existence, morality, and the self. These beliefs inspired monumental architecture, literature, and practices that spread across Asia, shaping cultures from Indonesia to Tibet. The indigenous civilizations of the Americas, crafted their own rich tapestries. The complex calendars of the Maya, the militaristic empire of the Aztecs, and the administrative genius of the Incas each reflect unique responses to environment, society, and spirituality. Their achievements in agriculture, astronomy, and urban planning testify to human ingenuity. Trade routes like the Silk Road and the Trans-Saharan networks were arteries of exchange not only for goods but for culture and knowledge. They connected empires and peoples separated by vast distances, allowing ideas, religions, and technologies to flow across continents. Religion often served as both a unifying force and a source of conflict. The rise of monotheistic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam brought new visions of community and morality. Their spread influenced law, art, and politics, shaping societies and empires at the same time. Polytheistic traditions and indigenous beliefs persisted, blending with newer religions to create syncretic cultures rich in symbolism and ritual. Art and architecture provide vivid windows into the values and aspirations of ancient peoples. From the monumental pyramids of Egypt and Mesoamerica to the refined marble temples of Greece. From the intricate calligraphy of Islamic manuscripts to the serene landscapes of Chinese ink painting, artistic expression reflects civilizations' soul. Technological innovations, from the invention of the wheel and metallurgy to advances in navigation, medicine, and printing, transformed daily life and expanded human capability. These achievements often crossed cultural boundaries, illustrating the shared human quest for progress. Yet, alongside creation, civilizations also experienced conflict, collapse, and transformation. Wars, invasions, environmental changes, and internal strife shaped histories, sometimes wiping away entire cultures, other times prompting rebirth and renewal. The story of ancient civilizations is therefore one of resilience and adaptation. It teaches us that the rise and fall of empires are part of a larger cycle of change, but also that knowledge, culture, and spirit endure beyond political boundaries. As you listen to this unfolding narrative, consider the countless generations whose dreams, struggles, and triumphs echo in our own lives. The past is not distant. It is woven into the present, guiding and challenging us. Civilization is our shared inheritance, a reminder of what humanity has achieved and what it might still become. As the centuries unfurl in the grand saga of human civilization, one cannot help but marvel at the intricate dance of culture, power, and innovation that has shaped the world. Each civilization, while distinct in language, religion, and customs, has contributed threads to a shared human story, a story of resilience, curiosity, and transformation. In the ancient Near East, the cradle of civilization, successive empires rose and fell, each leaving indelible marks on the fabric of history. The Assyrians, fierce warriors and master administrators, built vast networks of roads and communication, pioneering methods of governance that allowed them to control diverse peoples. Their capital, Nineveh, housed one of the largest libraries of the ancient world, preserving cuneiform tablets that would one day reveal the dawn of writing to modern scholars. Following them, the Neo-Babylonians reasserted Mesopotamian power, famously constructing the legendary Hanging Gardens and enhancing the city of Babylon with monumental architecture and complex legal systems. Their contributions to astronomy and mathematics continued the long tradition of scholarly pursuit in the region. Meanwhile, Egypt's civilization, one of the longest lasting in history, was a beacon of stability and religious continuity. The pharaoh's divine authority was expressed in colossal pyramids and intricate temples, but also in detailed records of daily life, commerce, and governance. The Nile River, lifeblood of Egypt, provided fertile soil that supported agriculture for millennia, sustaining a civilization that prized order, balance, and the afterlife to the west. The Phoenicians, master sailors and traders, forged networks across the Mediterranean. Their development of the alphabet simplified writing system based on phonetics laid the groundwork for many modern scripts, enabling wider literacy and communication. Greece, with its city-states like Athens and Sparta, introduced revolutionary political ideas. Democracy, albeit limited to free male citizens, was born. Hera, radical concept that power could reside with the people, not just monarchs or aristocrats. Greek philosophy explored questions of existence, ethics, and knowledge, while drama and art flourished in forms that continue to influence the world. The Romans, inheritors of Greek culture and more, built a vast empire renowned for its law, engineering, and military organization. Roman roads, aqueducts, and cities connected distant provinces, fostering unity across diverse populations. Their legal codes form the basis for many modern systems, emphasizing rights, contracts, and governance beyond the Mediterranean. In the Indian subcontinent, the Maurya and Gupta empires oversaw golden ages of art, science, and philosophy. Writings of scholars like Aryabhata advanced mathematics and astronomy, while religious traditions such as Hinduism and Buddhism shaped social and cultural life. China's dynasties, from the Qin unification to the Han and Tang, brought remarkable advances in governance, technology, and culture. The Great Wall, the civil service examinations, papermaking, and porcelain are but a few legacies that illustrate their enduring impact. The Americas' ancient civilizations, from the Olmec to the Maya, Aztec, and Inca, demonstrated sophisticated understanding of agriculture, astronomy, and urban planning. Their monumental architecture, religious rituals, and social organization speak to a rich and complex human story independent of the Old World. These civilizations were not isolated bubbles, but part of a larger web of human endeavor. Trade routes, like the Silk Road and Trans-Saharan paths, connected peoples and ideas, fostering cultural exchange and economic growth. Religions and philosophies shaped moral frameworks and community identities. They guided rulers and commoners alike, providing meaning and cohesion. Yet they also sparked conflicts and schisms, reminding us of the complex interplay between belief and power. Art, science, and technology advanced through cooperation and competition, inspiration and adaptation. Each invention, discovery, or artistic masterpiece built upon the foundations laid by predecessors, highlighting the cumulative nature of human progress. But civilization is also fragile. Environmental changes, internal strife, invasions, and economic upheaval have repeatedly tested societies. The collapse of empires often led to periods of fragmentation and loss. but also to regeneration and new synthesis. Through these cycles, humanity has learned, adapted, and persevered. The stories of ancient civilizations are testimonies to this enduring spirit. As we continue to explore these narratives, we glimpse not only the achievements, but the challenges, the failures, and the complexities that define civilization. It is a story without end, a living heritage passed from one generation to the next, inviting us to reflect, learn, and imagine what lies ahead. Civilization, in its essence, is a continuous dialogue between past and present, a living, breathing mosaic crafted from the aspirations, triumphs, and trials of countless generations. As we journey further into history, the echoes of ancient societies resonate with renewed clarity, reminding us of the roots beneath modern life. The classical world, especially, stands as a towering pillar in this grand narrative. The philosophies of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle explored the nature of knowledge, ethics, and governance, laying intellectual foundations that continue to shape philosophical thought. Their inquiries into the human condition invite reflection on what it means to live well and justly. Roman law, meticulously codified and remarkably sophisticated, has influenced legal systems around the globe. Concepts of citizenship, property, rights, and contractual agreements originated here, anchoring societies in principles of order and fairness. Roman engineering, feats roads, aqueducts, amphitheaters, literature, how practical innovation can serve cultural and political ambitions beyond. The Mediterranean, India's Gupta Empire flourished as a beacon of scientific and artistic achievement. Mathematicians introduced the concept of zero and decimal notation, revolutionizing computation. Buddhist and Hindu art and literature enriched spiritual life, while advances in medicine and astronomy broadened human understanding. In East Asia, the Tang and Song dynasties presided over periods of remarkable cultural efflorescence. Poetry, painting, and philosophy thrived alongside technological innovations such as movable type printing, gunpowder, and the magnetic compass. These inventions would ripple across continents, shaping history in profound ways. Meanwhile, the indigenous civilizations of the Americas developed independently, crafting sophisticated social, political, and spiritual systems. The Mayas' astronomical observations and calendar systems revealed deep engagement with cosmic cycles. The Aztecs' urban planning and ritual life centered on a vibrant capital, while the Incas' administrative prowess and engineering marvels connected vast and challenging terrains. Throughout these diverse cultures, common threads emerge: the human impulse to build, to create, to understand. Agriculture transformed nomadic groups into settled communities, enabling population growth and social complexity. Writing systems codified language and knowledge, allowing ideas to transcend generations. Religious and philosophical systems offered frameworks for meaning and order. Trade routes, whether the Silk Road, stretching from China to the Mediterranean, or the trans-Saharan caravans across Africa, served as arteries of exchange, transmitting goods, beliefs, and technologies. These networks facilitated encounters between distant peoples, fostering innovation and sometimes conflict. Religion played multifaceted roles, uniting communities while sometimes dividing them. The spread of monotheistic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, reshaped societies politically and culturally. At the same time, indigenous and polytheistic beliefs persisted, blending and evolving in dynamic ways. Art and architecture reflected societal values and aspirations. From the majestic pyramids of Egypt to the elegant temples of Greece, from Islamic geometric patterns to Chinese landscape paintings, artistic expression preserved stories, ideals, and spiritual visions. Technological advances from the wheel and plow to metallurgy, navigation, and printing transformed human capability, reshaping economies and environments. These achievements, often shared and adapted across cultures, demonstrate the collective nature of human progress. Yet history also teaches us about fragility. Empires crumbled under internal and external pressures. Environmental changes, such as droughts or deforestation, challenged society's survival. Social upheavals and invasions disrupted continuity. Through it all, civilization evolved, rebuilt, and renewed, reshaped by the forces of change and continuity. As modern inheritors of this vast legacy, we are called to reflect on the lessons embedded in ancient histories, to appreciate the resilience and creativity that sustained humanity through millennia, to recognize the interconnectedness of cultures and peoples, and to imagine how the story might continue, how the foundations laid by those before us might guide the path ahead. Civilization is not a fixed monument, but an ongoing creation, a tapestry, still being woven by each of us. The story of ancient civilizations is one of humanity's most profound achievements, testament to our capacity to build, create, and transform. Across the millennia, civilizations have risen from the fertile banks of rivers, flourished in deserts and mountains, and stretched across vast plains and seas, each leaving a unique imprint on the world. As we delve deeper into this unfolding narrative, we encounter the brilliant civilizations of the ancient Near East. The Sumerians, often credited as the world's first civilization, gave us cuneiform writing, the earliest known form of written expression. Their innovations in irrigation, law codes, and urban planning laid the groundwork for successive societies. Following them, the Babylonians expanded on these achievements. The Code of Hammurabi, one of the earliest legal codes, introduced principles of justice and governance that resonate even today. Babylon was also a center of astronomical observation and mathematics, influencing later cultures' understanding of the cosmos. The ancient Egyptians, meanwhile, achieved unparalleled feats of architecture and religious complexity. The pyramids, monumental tombs to pharaohs, symbolized both technical prowess and spiritual beliefs in the afterlife. Hieroglyphics, a writing system blending logographic and alphabetic elements, recorded history, religion, and administration, preserving Egypt's rich heritage. Farther west, the Phoenicians emerged as master seafarers and traders, spreading goods, ideas, and the alphabet across the Mediterranean. Their innovations made writing more accessible and versatile, influencing Greek and Latin scripts that shape languages worldwide. The classical world, centered on Greece and Rome, pushed the boundaries of political thought, art, and science. Democracy in Athens introduced citizen participation in governance, while philosophy challenged humanity to seek reason and virtue. Roman engineering and law created infrastructures and systems that supported sprawling empires. In Asia, the Mauryan and Gupta empires in India fostered intellectual and spiritual flourishing. Advances in mathematics, medicine, and astronomy emerged alongside the rise of Hinduism and Buddhism, shaping cultures far beyond the subcontinent. China's dynasties, especially the Qin and Han, unified vast territories under bureaucratic systems that valued scholarship and innovation. The invention of paper, the compass, and gunpowder heralded technologies that would change the world. The Americas, though isolated, nurtured rich civilizations, the Olmecs, Maya, Aztecs, and Incas. Their cities, religious practices, and scientific observations reveal sophisticated societies, deeply attuned to their environments. Trade networks connected these diverse worlds. The Silk Road, trans-Saharan routes, and maritime paths enabled exchange of goods, ideas, and beliefs, fostering cultural diffusion and economic vitality. Religious traditions, from polytheism to monotheism, shaped moral frameworks and social cohesion. They inspired art, architecture, and governance, but also conflicts and schisms. Art and technology illustrate civilizations' creativity and adaptability. From monumental architecture to intricate manuscripts, from metallurgy to navigation, human ingenuity shines across cultures and epochs. Yet history also reveals vulnerability. Empires collapsed, cities fell, environments changed, but civilizations adapted, transformed, and renewed. Our journey through ancient civilizations is a journey through humanity itself, a story of connection, aspiration, and continuity. As you reflect on this vast heritage, consider the lessons it offers of resilience amid change, of the power of knowledge, and of the enduring human spirit. Civilization is a gift we inherit and a legacy we shape. It is an ongoing story, one that you, too, are part of. In tracing the vast arc of ancient civilizations, one is struck not only by their grandeur but also by their profound complexity. Civilization is far more than monumental architecture or vast empires. It is the collective pulse of human endeavor, intricate interplay of culture, governance, religion, economy, and daily life. Take the enduring legacies of Mesopotamia, often called the cradle of civilization. The Fertile Crescent saw the birth of the earliest cities, Uruk, Ur, and Babylon. Here, humanity first mastered irrigation, transforming arid lands into productive fields. The invention of writing cuneiform ushered in an era where law, commerce, literature, and history could be recorded and transmitted across generations. Mesopotamian societies grappled with questions that resonate to this day: how to balance justice and authority, how to organize communities. The Code of Hammurabi, with its eye for an eye principle, reflects an early attempt to codify fairness and social order in Egypt. Civilization blossomed along the life-giving Nile. The predictable flooding cycles allowed for agricultural abundance, sustaining a stable society ruled by divine pharaohs. Religion infused every aspect of life, emphasizing the afterlife's importance and the cosmic order, or Mat. Their hieroglyphs conveyed stories of gods and kings, ensuring cultural continuity. The Phoenicians, though lesser known today, were pivotal in shaping communication and commerce. Their alphabet streamlined writing, influencing Greek and Latin, scripts that form the basis of many modern alphabets. Their seafaring prowess connected distant shores, spreading ideas and goods. The Greek city-states, particularly Athens, laid the foundations of Western political thought. Democracy, though limited, empowered citizens to participate in governance. Philosophy probed the nature of existence, knowledge, and ethics, encouraging critical inquiry. Their contributions to drama, history, and art continue to inspire Rome. Expanded upon these foundations, establishing an empire that spanned continents. Roman law introduced principles of equity and legal procedure, while engineering marvels like aqueducts and roads supported urban life and military campaigns. The Pax Romana fostered relative stability and cultural exchange in Asia. Indian empires achieved remarkable intellectual and spiritual advancements. The concept of zero and decimal numeration revolutionized mathematics. The spread of Buddhism and Hinduism influenced societies across Asia, blending with local traditions. Their art and literature enriched the cultural landscape. China's dynasties unified vast territories, implementing sophisticated bureaucracies based on Confucian principles. Innovations such as paper, printing, gunpowder, and the compass had far-reaching impacts. The Great Wall symbolized the state's efforts to defend and unify the Americas civilizations. Olmec, Maya, Aztec, and Inca developed independently, yet exhibited comparable complexity. Their achievements in agriculture, astronomy, urban planning, and governance reflect human ingenuity adapted to diverse environments. Trade routes like the Silk Road and maritime networks linked distant peoples, facilitating exchange of goods, ideas, and culture. Religions spread along these paths, transforming societies and sparking new syntheses. Religion and philosophy offered frameworks for understanding existence, guiding laws, and shaping cultural identities. Monotheistic faiths like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam influenced vast regions, while indigenous and polytheistic traditions persisted and evolved. Art and technology reveal civilizations' creativity and problem-solving, from monumental constructions to delicate manuscripts, from metallurgy to navigation. These achievements illuminate human potential. Yet civilizations were vulnerable to environmental shifts, social upheavals, and invasions. Empires collapsed, and societies transformed, but knowledge and culture often survived, adapted, and renewed. The story of ancient civilizations is ultimately a story of humanity's aspirations, struggles, and resilience. As you absorb this narrative, recognize the enduring connections that bind us to the past and the responsibilities they confer. Civilization is a shared inheritance and a collective project, ever evolving with each generation. As the story of ancient civilizations unfolds, one cannot overlook the dynamic interplay between environment, innovation, and human society. Geography shaped the destinies of peoples, while human ingenuity transformed landscapes, enabling civilizations to flourish against the odds. The great river valleys Tigris and Euphrates, Nile, Indus, Yellow rivers served as cradles of civilization. Their predictable floods nourished fertile lands, allowing agriculture to support dense populations. In these fertile crescents, humans transitioned from nomadic existence to settled life, birthing cities, governance, and culture. Yet, reliance on these waterways also presented challenges. Flood control, irrigation, and soil management required complex cooperation and administrative structures. Ancient societies developed sophisticated engineering solutions, canals, levees, reservoirs, demonstrating early mastery of environmental management. Beyond rivers, deserts, mountains, and forests shaped cultural development and interaction. The rugged Himalayas isolated South Asia, preserving unique traditions while limiting external influence. The vast Sahara served both as a barrier and conduit for trade, enabling the rise of powerful West African kingdoms like Ghana and Mali. The Mediterranean Sea connected diverse cultures, fostering commerce and cultural exchange among Greeks, Romans, Phoenicians, and others. Maritime trade facilitated the spread of goods, ideas, and religions, knitting together a vibrant tapestry of civilization. Trade routes were not merely economic pathways but channels for intellectual and spiritual exchange. The Silk Road connected East and West, allowing Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, and myriad philosophies to traverse continents. Technological innovations like papermaking and gunpowder journeyed along these roads, reshaping societies. The role of religion in ancient civilizations was multifaceted. It provided meaning, social cohesion, and legitimized rulers' authority. Polytheistic pantheons embodied natural forces and human virtues, while monotheistic faiths introduced new ethical paradigms and communal identities. Religious rituals and architecture, temples, ziggurats, pyramids, mosques embodied the sacred, shaping urban landscapes and cultural expression. Sacred texts preserved moral codes and cosmologies, influencing laws and social customs. Philosophical traditions emerged alongside religion, often questioning and expanding human understanding. Greek rationalism, Indian metaphysics, Chinese Confucianism, and Taoism each offered distinct worldviews, contributing to civilization's intellectual richness. Art and architecture reflected these beliefs and societal values. Monumental structures symbolized power and divinity. Intricate crafts conveyed stories and identity. Artistic styles evolved through cultural interactions, blending influences and innovations. Technological progress, metallurgy, agriculture, transportation, communication transformed human life. Innovations spread through networks of contact and conquest, illustrating civilization's interconnectedness. Yet history is marked by cycles of growth, decline, and renewal. Environmental degradation, climate change, social unrest, and external invasions precipitated collapses. However, these endings often paved the way for new cultural syntheses and advancements. The legacies of ancient civilizations endure in language, law, religion, art, and institutions. They remind us that humanity's achievements are collective and cumulative. As we continue to explore this vast narrative, we gain insight not only into the past, but into the challenges and possibilities that face us today. Civilization is a fragile, magnificent mosaic, each piece vital, each story interconnected. It is a call to stewardship, creativity, and understanding as we shape the future upon the foundations of those who came before. The journey through ancient civilizations brings us face to face with humanity's enduring quest for meaning, order, and progress. Time and again, societies confronted the mysteries of existence, sought to organize themselves amid complexity, and endeavored to leave lasting legacies. Consider the profound influence of language and writing. from the earliest cuneiform tablets to the intricate hieroglyphs of Egypt, from the alphabets of the Phoenicians to the classical scripts of Greece and Rome. Writing became a vessel for knowledge, culture, and administration. It allowed histories to be recorded, laws to be codified, and ideas to be transmitted across generations. Writing also democratized knowledge, albeit slowly. The spread of alphabets simplified literacy, empowering more individuals to participate in civic life, trade, and scholarship. Manuscripts and later printed books became treasured vessels of human thought, preserving philosophy, science, and art. Philosophy and religion often intertwined, shaping worldviews and guiding moral conduct. Ancient Greeks explored reason and virtue, Indian sages pondered karma and dharma, Chinese thinkers emphasized harmony and balance. These ideas fostered ethical frameworks and social cohesion. Governance evolved alongside these intellectual currents, from tribal councils and monarchies to republics and empires. Civilizations experimented with systems of power and law. The concept of justice, fairness in rule and rights emerged as a central theme, influencing political structures across time. The arts, sculpture, painting, literature, music, architecture expressed collective identity and individual creativity. Monumental temples and palaces symbolized divine authority and cultural pride. Poetry and theater explored human emotions and social dynamics, engaging audiences across centuries. Technological innovation propelled civilizations forward. Metallurgy, advanced tools and weapons. Agriculture improved with irrigation and crop rotation. Navigation expanded horizons. Each discovery built upon previous knowledge, fostering continuous progress. Trade connected distant peoples, creating economic interdependence and cultural exchange. Markets bustled with goods and ideas. Religions spread, and artistic styles traveled, blending into new forms. However, civilization's path was often turbulent. Environmental challenges, internal strife, invasions, and economic shifts led to collapse and transformation. The fall of great empires like Rome or the Maya triggered periods of uncertainty but also seeded renewal. The resilience of civilization lies in its capacity to adapt, learn, and evolve. Knowledge preserved in libraries, traditions maintained through oral histories, and cultural practices passed down ensure continuity despite upheaval. As we approach the culmination of our exploration, it becomes evident that ancient civilizations are not relics of a distant past but living foundations of the modern world. Their stories inform our institutions, beliefs, and aspirations. Reflecting on this vast heritage, we appreciate the interconnectedness of human history and the shared responsibility to steward its legacy. Civilization is both fragile and enduring, shaped by countless hands over time. In honoring the past, we find guidance for the future. As our journey through the story of ancient civilizations draws to a close, we stand at the crossroads of past and future, carrying the wisdom and lessons of millennia etched into the fabric of human history. Civilization is a vast, intricate mosaic, each piece representing the dreams, struggles, and achievements of countless generations. From the earliest settlements along fertile rivers to sprawling empires that spanned continents, humanity has continually sought to understand its place in the cosmos. to organize societies around shared values, and to create legacies that transcend time. The pyramids of Egypt, the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, the temples of Greece, the palaces of India, the Great Wall of China. The cities of the Maya and Incal stand as monuments, not just of stone and mortar, but of human aspiration and ingenuity. These civilizations taught us about governance and justice, philosophy and faith, art and science, innovation and resilience. They remind us that progress is never linear, but a complex dance of creation and destruction, stability and change. Their stories are intertwined with themes of cooperation and conflict, belief and reason, tradition and transformation. They highlight the power of human connection through trade, conquest, and cultural exchange to shape the course of history. As we inherit this rich tapestry, we also inherit responsibility, the responsibility to learn from the past, to cherish the knowledge and values that sustain societies, and to confront the challenges of our own time with wisdom and compassion. Civilization is not merely a relic of history. It is a living, evolving entity, shaped by our choices and actions. The echoes of ancient voices continue to inspire us, urging reflection, empathy, and innovation. And as the story continues beyond these words, may we carry forward the flame of civilization with care, honoring those who came before and those yet to come. This journey through ancient civilizations reveals a profound truth that we are all part of one shared human story, an unbroken thread woven across time and space. May that knowledge guide us as we write the next chapters of our collective existence.